Hi, it's Erin. I'm your regular co-host of First Bite. First of all, I want to thank y'all so much for tuning and listening to First Bite. We've been incredibly encouraged and excited by the feedback we've received and are looking forward to the future. In the meantime, if you've been enjoying First Bite, please take a moment, maybe pause your device to subscribe, leave a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you're listening. This podcast started out as a small idea to bring convenient, tangible resources to SLPs and other professionals, and we value your feedback more than anything. Leaving those reviews truly helps us out. Enjoy the episode and thanks for listening.
Hey, Erin, have you heard that we have a promotional code for speechtherapypd.com?
I think I heard the same thing.
Yes. So as if we both hadn't heard that, but it's First Bite. So if you log on to speechtherapypd.com and enter the promotional code First Bite, it takes $10 off an annual subscription. And Erin, do you want to?
That includes all the pod courses.
Yes. And we have 4 now. I'm not sure if y'all knew that. We have 4. We have First Bite. Yeah, we do. It's Speech Uncensored. And in case y'all haven't heard of this lovely lady, she focuses on adults. And I know that there's a fair few of you out there that PRN in peds and or PRN in adults. So be sure to check out Speech Uncensored. And it also includes the Speech Link and the SLP Now podcast with Miss Marisha, who I like fangirl crush. She's awesome. Okay. All right. So promo code is
First Bite.
Whoop, whoop. And don't let it autocorrect you to BYTE because it did that to me a couple times. So there it is. Woohoo! Hi, folks, and welcome to First Bite. Fed, fun, functional resources for the pediatric clinician. I am your host on this nerd venture, Michelle Dawson, MSCCC SLP, the All Things Peds SLP. I am a colleague in the trenches of home health early intervention, right there with you. I run my own private practice, Heartwood Speech Therapy, in Coletown, South Carolina, and guest lecture nationwide on best practices for early intervention for the medically fragile child. First Bite's mission is short and sweet, to bring light and hope to the world for the pediatric clinician, parent, or advocate. In this podcast, we cover everything from AAC to breastfeeding, best practice for running a private practice, and all the nitty-gritty details involving feeding and swallowing by interviewing the subject matter experts themselves. We bring the data to you. Every 4th episode, I am joined by the lovely Erin Forward, MSP, CF, SLP, a Yankee transplant who actually inspired this journey and who also walks the wild, woolly, and sometimes sticky walk of early intervention with us. Sit back, relax, and watch out for all the squirrels and enjoy this geeky gig brought to you by SpeechTherapyPD.com. I first met tonight's guest on an awkwardly timed speaking tour. It turns out that everyone in New York City and New Jersey knows that Memorial Day weekend is the weekend to go to the beach, as the beach is pretty much open that weekend. Being the little Southern belle that I am, well, I kind of sort of missed that memo. I mean, it could easily be 85 degrees in December here in South Carolina, so our beaches are open year-round. So, yep, I missed the memo and had poor timing on that speaking tour. Long story short, I was sent up north to one of my favorite cities to speak about pediatric dysphagia and feeding aversions on the worst weekend a person could want to go, as basically the entire feeding community was on vacation mode and had gone the opposite direction of me. And I can't say that I blamed them. It was wicked hot in the city that weekend, and the ocean was calling. I would have gone too. It was really, really hot walking on the sidewalks. However, there were a few stragglers that stayed behind, and for that, I am grateful. In the room that day was a very stylish registered dietitian who rocked the most amazing pair of glasses that I have seen to date, And she kind of inspired my sequin cat eye reading glasses. So whoop, whoop. Well, her and I got to joking about being boy moms. And one thing led to another. And her and I got busy talking about the role of a registered dietitian in early intervention. What? You do that up here? I like half squealed, half shouted, half questioned, all with a significant amount of glee in my voice. Well, of course, she replied. And I can't do a Yankee drawl, but trust me, she had like the perfect New York City voice for that answer. And that was it. I was hooked. If I come across a state that is rocking their early intervention system, doing best practice in the most holistic way possible, then that's the practice and the model that I want to bring home and somehow implement in my little Palmetto state. Tell me more about this thing. That was kind of sort of my mantra over the last, has it been like a year and a half between emails and phone calls? And that is what led me and us to today's Fed, Fun, and Functional episode with Deborah Malkoff-Cohen, MSRD, CDN, CDE, founder of City Kids Nutrition and New York City NYCeatwell nutrition consultation services for children and adults living in and around New York City. So let me start with welcome, Deborah, and immediately follow that with what in the world do all of those letters behind your name mean? Hi.
Hi. Thank you for having me. My husband says the same thing. He's like, I don't even know what all those letters mean. So just to break it down, MS is Master's of Science. RD is Registered Dietitian. CDN is a New York State licensure. It's Certified Dietitian Nutritionist. In other states, it's LDN, Licensed Dietitian Nutritionist. It depends on what state you are. It just verifies all your credentials to make sure you're legit. And CDE is Certified Diabetes Educator. So it's a lot of things.
Okay, so real quick, the CDE, is that per age group? Does that mean like geriatrics or pediatrics, or is that like an over?
No, that is just, the age is not, it's basically adult. If you want, I basically only treat adult diabetes, or late teens, which are pretty much adult. I don't do pediatric, but that's more of like a subspecialty, but they are still CDE, but you would probably subspecialize in pediatrics. The test is geared more towards
you have to sit for a test for that.
Oh, yeah. You have to do like 1,000 hours, sit for a test. Oh, it's
that was like me working on my CLC, the lactation consultant. Yeah, exactly. I didn't have to do 1,000 hours. That turns into the IBCLC, which I think is like 1,500 hours. But like, whew, no, thank you.
It's a big. Well, the thing is you have to remember I'm adjusting insulin. I am, really in the nitty gritty. I love type 1 diabetes. So, it is a very intricate, nuance of how to treat patients and adjust medication. It's not just food. It's a lot of medication adjusting. So you really need to know what you're doing.
I have a little one down here that has Down syndrome, autism, type 1 diabetes, and exocrine pancreatic insufficiency.
Yeah. Insufficiency. Yeah. Well,
yes.
Yeah. I'm surprised the baby doesn't have celiac.
Well, mom already has him on a gluten-free vegetarian diet. He's gluten-free, dairy-free. He's basically a vegan, and he's doing amazing. And
this is why she needs a dietitian.
She's actually a psychologist, and she should be, but like she's amazing. And I like break bread with this family when I'm doing therapy sessions and like model what he's eating, and I model it. She calls it her teriyaki dinner, and I don't know what she puts in there. But it's amazing and delicious, and it's pureed. And I will go there knowing that I'm having my lunch while we are doing feeding therapy, and like, yeah, she cooks better than I do. I need her to write a book. Okay.
Well, I mean, if your kid's diet is very limited, then a big thing is making sure that everything they're eating is delicious and the most nutrient dense so that you're not missing any nutrients or food groups or things like that.
That's probably the best takeaway point for like pediatric feeding in general ever.
Yeah. I just had a kid today from early intervention. I did an evaluation. He has autism, and they were eating meat, and then mom wanted to make him a vegetarian vegan. And then I said, unless you're doing it for religious reasons, if the child is already on the spectrum, or spectrum is like just another level, but if your kid is a picky eater, taking away foods just because only makes it harder for them to find other foods they're going to like. If they already have texture preferences and other sensory issues, just taking foods away just to take them away is just doing the baby or child a disservice, unless it's for religious reasons. You know, if you're vegan for a religious reason, I'm never going to tell you not be vegan. But she just became vegan because she saw, she saw a documentary, and I was like, listen, you and your husband can eat any way you want, but if this is a 2-year-old who, he's already gluten dairy free, and then she was taking eggs away and this away, and I went through his diet with her, and he wasn't getting enough protein, he wasn't getting any calcium. There's just no way he's going to grow properly and be able to function with his therapies if he has no sense of protein. His brain can't function right. So we went through his whole diet, and I gave her a million suggestions, and she was like, "How do you know this?"
Because you have all the alphabet soup. That's how you know these things.
Yeah, she's like, "How do you know all of this?" I'm living there 12 years, and I've seen a million kids with autism, or picky eaters, or food allergies, and you have to be creative. And she was like, "Oh my God, I'm starving my child." And I'm like, "No, you're not. You're a great mom. You just need the tools and the education and the options to think outside the box a little bit."
Yes.
And she was like, "I'm so happy I came." It was so cute. And so, it's even just having a nutrition evaluation, not even doing services, but even that 1 hour together gives a mom or a family or a caregiver so many more things that they haven't thought about, that opens their mind to, and even I said to her, you don't have to feed him chicken. You don't even have to give him meat. If he gets enough, I feed my son Ripple milk and hemp milk because he had a milk protein allergy. I said 16 ounces of Ripple milk is enough calcium and protein. He doesn't even need to eat any meat sources. But if you can't get that into him, you need to supplement with something else.
Okay.
There's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. No, I'm just thinking you just justified the whole purpose for today in the opening 30 seconds, because that's just it. Okay, so in the world of speech pathology, and folks that are listening, correct me if I'm wrong, we are not taught about interprofessional practice with registered dietitians. We are not taught that registered dietitians are the gatekeepers to the magical foods. Okay. So if you have a kid that's only eating 3 foods, and we want a food chain or SOS approach to the next food up, then we need to consider what's best for that child. However, that is not our scope of practice. Our scope of practice is basically the safety of the PO and the branching of the food, not the selecting of the food. That falls on the shoulders, the educated and impassioned shoulders of the registered dietitian. Now, that being said, I am sure that many of y'all out there have practiced the last several weeks, months, or years under the misinformation that a registered dietitian is, for lack of a better phrase, and I'm not being mean here, this is just honestly what was told to me by an older colleague several years ago. She said an RD is basically a calculator. Their job is to tell the family how many calories the patient can have, and that's their job. And I listened. She was older. She was wiser. That was my, I trusted, but I didn't verify the source, for lack of a better phrase. But then I met, and I'm not sure if if those of y'all out there have heard it, I met Jeremy Pons, and he was on he had 2 episodes when we first started First Bite, like a year and change ago. So within the first 10 episodes, you'll hear Jeremy. And he absolutely blew me away because he was the first person that I could actually work with collaboratively here on patient care. And he's the person that opened my eyes that a registered dietitian is more than a calculator. So, Deborah, for all of the folks listening, please tell us what exactly a registered dietitian does.
I would love to do that. First, I just want to also tell people that a registered dietitian does 900 hours of an internship and sits for a national exam. Anyone can be called a nutritionist. So just be weary of people that hang up a shingle that says they're a nutritionist.
Okay.
A registered dietitian, you can also go on eatright.org and find nutritionists in your area that are qualified that deal in pediatrics specifically. I very infrequently do I specifically give parents calorie needs. I find that stresses them out. And unless I'm doing a tube feed where like you really need to do calorie and protein needs or free water and all that. But if it's for PO, I find that most parents will come back and like literally count calories and be very disappointed when their, orally defensive sensory kid eats 3 bites at every meal and like eats half the amount of calories they need. Every child eats differently. What my son was 27 pounds at 1. Most kids are between 17 is a small 1-year-old and like 24 is a above average 1-year-old. My kid was 27. He was also off the charts for height. So
he was proportional then.
Exactly. They say he's going to be 6'4". My husband is 5'9". So, okay. Alrighty. But my kid he looks like he's 4 and he's 2. My point is that, if you have a 5-pound child, they're going to be the 18-pound 1-year-old. If you have a 10-pound baby at birth, they're going to be a 27-pound 1-year-old. I don't give calories. I am more of a meet the family where they are. And, we go through the diet. We go through what they're eating. Are they snacking? Are they grazing? Are they eating meals with the family? Are they eating age-appropriate foods? Like the mom I had today, she wants her kid to be vegetarian, but she fed him juice 4 times a day. Like that to me is worse than having no meat.
That's so much sugar. That's so much sugar.
She said she was feeding him Honest Kids juice. So I Googled it and I said it's 9 grams of sugar per pouch. That turns into 2.5 teaspoons of sugar per pouch. So if you're eating 3 per day, your kid is getting what is that? 1 million teaspoons of sugar per day.
My boys get that 1 at lunch. That's the only juice they get for the day is 1. And we actually drink Honest Kids at lunch. And then I kind of figure, well, the teachers have to deal with the afternoon sugar fallout. But I mean, they get their 1 and they're done. And everybody. Right. And what cracks me up is, this summer they were up visiting my my in-laws and my 4-year-old, he goes, Mom. And he gets all conspiratorial looking on FaceTime. I drank Grandma's Coke. And then he looks over his shoulder at her and I hear her teasing in the background. Don't tell your mother. He goes, it was delicious. And I'm like, okay, but when you come home, no more Coke for you.
Exactly. Listen, my 2-year-old's never had juice ever. I know he's going to have it at a birthday party.
Yeah.
But I always say to parents, and when she gave him cashew milk, I said to her, I bet you it was the sweetened kind. And she said, you're right. When you give children chocolate milk, they're never going to go back to regular milk. When you start kids on vanilla yogurt, they're never going to eat plain yogurt. So my kid is on plain Greek yogurt and coconut yogurt mixed. My kid is, he's never had juice, just because I know once you go down that path, you can't take it back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I just try to teach families, yes, when my kid he had a lollipop because he had to go to the doctor because we thought he had strep throat, but he didn't. and he had a lollipop, and you would think he had gotten he like freaked out because it was his first like real sugar. And he's hyper to begin with. I said to my husband, if he had sugar all the time, the kid would be bouncing off the walls.
No.
Boys are automatically, crazy to begin with. So, I mean, the bottom line is I don't give calories. I talk more about whole foods, and I don't do portion sizes. Everyone says, what should my 2-year-old be eating? I like Ellen Satter. You put it on the plate. They decide how much to eat.
I like that.
There's no finish your food. My mom used to say there are starving kids all around the world. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to overeat because there are starving kids all around the world. I feel bad for them. Let's package up my food and send it.
You say that, but I have a kid brother, but oh my God, one of my brothers one time looked at my dad. He goes, well, then send it to them.
I love your brother. This is the thing.
He almost was no longer a brother. My dad jumped, old school Southern. My dad jumped up and he goes, boy. And I was like, oh, snap.
Exactly. You're like, feed it to the dog. Just feed it to the dog.
Yeah. I was like, I'm going to disappear now.
I think I'm going to go wash some dishes. I'll be back.
Yeah, I'll be back. Bye.
But the thing is that people don't understand that kids have satiety cues. They know when they're full. They know when they're hungry. So if a kid is saying, when my son tells me he's full, I don't push him. Sometimes I'll say 1 or 2 more bites if he like really has not eaten that much. Mm-hmm. But when he's hungry, he's done. When he wants more, he gets more. If he's eating like 2 pieces of chicken and he asks for a third, I will divert his attention and then say, okay, do you want some berries? Because I don't want him to overeat, because we do know that it takes 20 minutes for the stomach to tell the brain it's full. But
wait, say that again.
It takes 20 minutes for your stomach to signal to your brain that it's full.
That's brilliant. All right, continue. Sorry.
So, so a lot of times, we want our kids to finish everything. And sometimes I'll make my son an adult oatmeal, and it's, steel cut. It has a ton of fiber and protein, and we'll make it with banana or berries. And some days he'll finish the entire thing, and some days he'll eat half of it. And
that's okay.
Yeah, and that's fine. I never push him, ever.
Perfect.
Because I'm like, I know when when you're full. How do I know when you're full?
That's where I get so frustrated with some of the members of my interprofessional practice team for some of my kids, when I'm like, you just gave them 3 ounces of formula through their G-tube, and they get that how many times a day? Like anywhere from 5 to 6 times a day. Where, when, and how am I, as the feeding SLP, supposed to come in and try to teach them to eat purees or like the next stage up in consistency when they're full? Because
no, they should hold the 3 ounce feed before your session.
Yes. But that is commonplace, because unfortunately most people are so worried about the quantity that they don't.
Right. So then after you leave, if they don't eat enough, then they feed after.
Yes, which is
the child is not going to starve to death not eating 3 ounces.
Okay, folks, did you hear that? What she just said? If you have a kid that you're working from a G-tube to an oral feed, see if they can just simply hold off. That is one of the most valuable cues that you can take away from working collaboratively with an awesome registered dietitian.
Yeah, because why would they eat? The kid isn't hungry. The kid has no sense of urgency to try anything. If I'm full, I'm not trying anything unless it's the best thing in front of me. If a kid is orally defensive or is on a G-tube, there's a reason they have a G-tube. So unless they're hungry, they're not going to have any sort of push to try anything unless they're hungry.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Perfect. Yes. I wish I'm going to buy a plastic drum so that when people say amazing, profound things like that, I can be like, on the drum. Okay. All right. So from a scope of practice for the registered dietitian, y'all work with everything from patients that suffer from gestational diabetes, I love how
Everything.
I always go gestational because
I work with everything. Personally, I work with everything except eating disorders and sports nutrition.
Okay, so malnourishment, G-tube feeds, feeding aversions. I just want to like rattle off the words because most people don't know the disability types.
Yeah.
So, okay.
In EI, I worked with autism, food allergies, cerebral palsy, G-tubes, Down syndrome, genetic conditions, just global delays, anything that would impact just underweight. I've literally in the entire time I've done EI, which is over 12 years, I've had 2 obese kids.
Have you ever seen anybody with Korsakoff? Am I saying that word right?
No, not really. You don't really see that here.
Okay, I was just wondering because, I mean, I know that...
You go.
No, go ahead.
I do work at NYU a few days a week with the cleft and craniofacial team. Mm-hmm. And we did have a patient come from Uzbekistan, and she was 2.5 years old and 14 pounds.
Oh my stars.
Yeah. And I replaced a G-tube. I think she had a bilateral cleft lip and palate that was unrepaired at 2.5. So I think feeding was very hard for her, but she was also extremely malnourished. Her parents were fine. It was just, for some reason, she was very malnourished. So we fought and we finally placed a G-tube, and she gained like 9 pounds, and she looks like a different child, and she started walking. Now she's over 3 years old at this point. And she's finally fine. But, parents couldn't get enough protein and calories. It's, it's a fine line where, where dietitians actually work with the team to say, hey, we need to place a G-tube. I'm placing a G-tube on a 3-month-old with a bilateral cleft lip who is 8 pounds, 7 ounces at 3 months old.
Okay. So, all right. I just want to take 2 seconds here. Folks that are listening, when I first started out as the SLP, I worked in a silo. Okay. It's home health. We don't hardly ever get to talk with the team collaboratively. I mean, you get to see them maybe once every 6 months at an IFSP meeting, and half the time you end up calling in on those because you logistically can't get to that side of the town. I get it. Trust me, I wholeheartedly get it. But when I first started in the world of EI, I took it as a personal sign of failure if a child got a G-tube instead of the hope that it actually could be. But that took me, you're talking about an evolution in my practice over the last 9, 10, 15 years, however long I've been an SLP. Like, really truthfully, I had to recognize that if a child needed a feeding tube because of a caloric, metabolic, cardiac, GI, pulmonary, genetic condition, then once they got the tube, they were able to, the feeding tube was able to provide the quantity while I worked with the child and their family on independent, successful quality of the oral feed.
Yeah.
And that was a complete and total mind shift from how I was taught. Yeah. How I was taught and how I was trained. So it became this, instead of viewing a feeding tube as an enemy, because that's really truthfully, most of us out there, as soon as somebody says a feeding tube, you're like, no, but not for everybody, but for some of these patients that have those complex etiologies, this opens a door so that the child can be, because fed is fed is fed is fed is fed.
100%.
Yes.
100%.
Yes. NG, oral, G, GJ, J, or TPN. Get the kid fed and then watch them grow, walk, talk, and learn to eat. It's amazing.
This 3-month-old, almost 3-month-old that we're putting the G-tube in, mom's a nurse.
Yep.
And the kid, I've changed the formula a million times. I've spoken to the pediatrician, the GI, we've sent her to GI. I've spoken to everyone on the team, and she's on Prevacid the highest dose for her age. She's on Elecare, which is obviously obviously the most hypoallergenic formula. She is still fighting feeds, and I said to mom, once we place a G-tube, she takes an ounce through the bottle, whatever's left over, you throw in the G-tube. She takes a 3-ounce bottle. You don't use the G-tube. She takes none of the bottle. All of it goes through the G tube. I said, the stress that's going to be released from this family is going to be huge. They already have to worry about a big surgery, 2 big surgeries before she turns 1. Let's alleviate some of the pressure on the family, since all they want to do is feed their daughter, and she's not even taking in enough formula, so she's not gaining weight, which is even more scary for a parent. So,
and folks, that you said something in there that I want to just share. And a registered dietitian can make the formula changes. They do not need a pediatrician to sign off on formula changes. And sometimes when you have a kid that only sees the RD like periodically, but you can see that whatever formula they're currently on is like making them sick, if you can't get through to the pediatrician, reach out to the registered dietitian, because
yes.
I've had so many kids go from, and we can't use names, but I'll let you fill in the cues, when the first ingredient is sugar and the second ingredient is corn, and they go from those synthesized formulas to like an amazing plant-based, organic, actual food formula, and all of a sudden they start growing hair, growing teeth, their color improves, the bags under the eyes dissipate. The RD can make those calls. So yay.
Yeah. And also, I fight with insurance, get things covered.
Mm-hmm.
Different, you have kids on G tubes. I've changed G tubes. Now when I'm at NYU, I have a little of a different role where I work in a team, like the feeding team at NYU and I work hand in hand. And even in my private practice, I have a few feeding therapists that I refer to, like they're, them and myself are like a revolving door. Like we work hand in hand. Sometimes people call me or contact me through my website, and I always get on the phone with them, because I would say 50% of the time they need a feeding therapist and not me first.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times they'll say, my child isn't eating, they only have a few textures, or they're eating 3 foods. And I'll say, you know what? I can't help you, because I can give you 15 foods for you to try until you get the feeding resolved. You're going to waste your money working with me. So I'll give my friends who do feeding therapy, and then I say in 6 months, or whenever you feel like you've hit a stride, then move me back in.
Mm-hmm.
But it isn't always the dietitian is the first line. They reach out to me, but sometimes I push them to an OT or an SLP feeding. Or one woman, I sent her to the feeding clinic at NYU. I was like, your kid needs a whole overhaul. Like, I don't know if there's a lip tie, a tongue tie. You really have to just, look at the whole feeding structure. I don't know if they're aspirating, so there's a huge crossover between the two. So I always think, I always connect with feeding, always.
But that's why we should be working collaboratively as interprofessional.
I can't believe they're not more by where you guys are.
Okay. All right. So that's just it. God has blessed my stars, and I have traveled the nation lecturing. Okay. And that's so cool to me. And I have seen how different states practice. Every single state embraces early intervention slightly different than the states adjacent to them. Okay. So when I went up there and you told me that like you were within the early intervention system, like I've only seen that, I think it was in Kansas and in California before. I haven't seen it in the other states. Like in the state of South Carolina, we don't have registered dietitians readily available. And then part of me wonders, is that a bottleneck issue? And y'all, this is just me just expounding a situation like brainstorm style. But we only have like 2 programs in the state of South Carolina where you can finish your registered dietitian degree. And so, I mean, if they graduate 30 a year, and that's 60 new RDs across the entire state, not guaranteeing where they're going to go to. I mean, so hint, hint, if you're a registered dietitian and you're looking for an amazing job, South Carolina is we're sunny. We have the beach.
I was just going to say, you can be 85 in the winter. I'm coming there.
My dog got attacked. Dog got stung by a bumblebee like 2 days before Christmas because the South.
Wow.
Yeah, she went into anaphylactic shock and her face swelled up, but like luckily,
oh my God.
our vet's amazing, and she was like, just bring her in because if it's gonna happen, it'll happen to dog. Bless her. She's sitting there looking at me like, stop talking about it. Yeah, she's spoiled, rotten, and fluffy. She's fine.
But I have to tell you, for all the dietitians that have graduated in New York, there's probably 3 in early intervention in New York. 3 dietitians.
Okay, so what does that look like? Because that's my second question of the day.
So I was so my sister-in-law is an ABA supervisor.
Okay.
And she had me, my first job, nutrition is my second career. So when I was working in the hospital just to get experience and to get hours and all that fun stuff, my sister-in-law said, why don't you do this on the side? So I said, great, extra money, I'll get experience. And honestly, early intervention as a dietitian or a practitioner, you will learn so much. There's so many different, I've learned about so many different pediatric diseases, and you learn to work with so many different families and dynamics. And I mean, it is crazy how much you learn. I've been in people's homes. I mean, I can't even tell you. The way some people live, like, I don't know how they functioned, but
yes.
you're literally in people's homes. So, and the dynamics just, with men check out, women check out, it's just dynamics of everything. It's crazy. When you have kids with special needs, it's a lot to deal with the family. And so I became very in demand because I just had so much experience. And then there were a few other dietitians. And I think one was focusing more on like the psychology behind it. And I was more practical, giving like more practical, like, this is what you should do, try these things. But then my private practice started becoming busy. And then I started working at NYU and I just didn't have time. So and then I had my baby. So really I was doing services until my son was born, which was 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago. So now I just do evaluations. So I think there's only 2 other for services. I don't know how many people are actually getting nutrition services in New York now, but even just having the evaluation is so huge for families because in New York, early intervention is covered. It is a non-paying service. I know in New Jersey, patients pay based on your salary, but in New York, it is a free service.
In South Carolina, it's a free service too. So folks don't have to pay for if it's covered through our state early intervention system. And it's difficult to get in because you have to demonstrate like a certain level of discrepancy between functional capability and, like, for lack of a better phrase, like intelligence. So you normally have to have either a private therapist has had to evaluate you and write up a really strong report justifying why you need the services, or you have to have like basically 1.5 to 2 standard deviations delay in one of the areas in order to qualify. So
exactly.
But each state does that differently.
Couldn't afford it, you could get a nutrition evaluation that's covered. And even if you get, like this woman today, her son's on Medicaid, she couldn't afford to go see a dietitian unless
even
it was
on
covered under Medicaid. Huh?
Okay. Oh, yeah. So y'all state Medicaid will pay for the RD consult.
Well, pays for early intervention.
Okay.
I think they bill it through Medicaid.
Okay.
Because I think to be honest with you, I really don't know, but they used to. And so my point is that you can get all of these experts through early intervention where you probably not get all of this covered through insurance, or even if you did get it covered, you don't know are they going to come for an hour? A lot of these appointments now, they see you for 15 minutes. A lot of doctor's appointments, you're in and out within 2 minutes.
Hey, I'm not sure if you've caught the updates yet, but I have the pleasure, if you haven't seen it already, of announcing the 2020 SpeechTherapyPD.com Conference at Sea. We are going aboard a Royal Caribbean Alaskan cruise departing Vancouver, British Columbia, July 10th through 17th of 2020. And I am thrilled and humbled to be announcing that I will be presenting. I have a 3-hour course, a 2-hour course, a 1-hour course, and I'm co-presenting another 3-hour course. And my co-presentation will be with the one and only Lee Ann Porter of Speech Uncensored, which is Speech Therapy PD's newest adult course podcast that we just added to our lineup. And Marisha McGordy, the guru behind SLP Now, will also be there. And if you register before September 30th, then you get a free 6-month subscription to SLP Now. So again, make sure that you register before September 30th of 2019 for the Speech Therapy PD Conference at Sea, which is July 10th through 17th of 2020. And I cannot wait to see y'all aboard a ship where we're going to see real life bears and hopefully we'll get to see Northern Lights. So whoop, whoop, see you at sea. Bye. Okay, so when you were doing services, because now you primarily do just the evals for the early intervention system, but when you were doing 2 questions. One, how did they get to you for an eval? Who checks what box to say you have earned a registered dietitian EI eval? And then who checks the box to say you have earned the right or the door is open to get services for a registered dietitian?
So I do the evaluation. If I deem they need services, I write in my note they need services. And I deem them they need services.
How did they get to you?
So this is the funny thing, is that a lot of so really what should happen in all the states is that I believe, and I don't know if this happens, but I believe when a child gets enrolled in early intervention, they should get a pamphlet of these are all the services that you can get an evaluation for in early intervention. A lot of families don't realize, in New York, we have vision therapy. We have you can get orthotics. There's a lot of things you can get in early intervention that can be helpful. You can get a special high chair. I think you can get other things in early intervention to help you through physical therapy. A lot of moms, their kids have been in early intervention since they're 18 months and they find out about nutrition when their child is aging out. So I think what would be helpful in all the states is just to have almost like a pamphlet with the service coordinator, and they check off, these are all the services that you can have an evaluation for if you think your child needs it.
Okay. I wholeheartedly agree with that, because there are so many things that I wish I could wave a wand and fix right now. And
but think about it. If your child is getting physical therapy or speech therapy or special instruction and they're barely eating, or they have a stomach ache all day because their formula is not right, or they have a milk intolerance and no one knows about it, or they have reflux, they're not going to be able to focus on their task. You know what I mean? And so all the therapies that you're giving them are really for nothing because they're not optimizing all the therapy if they don't feel good. Right?
Absolutely. And that's why, okay, so to grow on that, when they leave early intervention, if they're not adequately nourished, hydrated, and have met their caloric needs, then they roll over to the LEA, the Local Education Association. Most of the kids in our caseload are going to qualify for some level of early childhood special education classrooms. Then they go to school and there is no feeding therapy in the school.
No, there's no nutrition either in CPSE.
Yeah. And so that becomes, all right. So folks that are listening, go check out anything. If you're an SLP, go check out anything you can by Emily Homer. She, I don't remember her website off the top of my address. I think it's emilyhomer.com or emilyhomerslp.com. She's out of Louisiana and has dedicated her life to fighting the good fight for creating feeding and swallowing therapy within public schools on the grounds that if a child is not safely or adequately hydrated and nourished, they will not be ready to learn.
100%.
And then they will not be able to access the goals and accommodations created within their IEP. And the best part is this woman, because she's so cool, you can email her and she will give you for free her protocols, like samples of her documents, so that you can work to create that within your LEA, within your local
That's
education.
awesome.
She's got just the coolest hair. Like, oh my God. I mean, like really truthfully, like I have a fair amount of gray hair like in my front, but she's got like the perfect ratio of like salt and pepper. And it's just, she's as beautiful as she is brilliant, just like you. And that's pretty badass. So like, okay.
But that's true. Like I had a little kid that came into our cleft and craniofacial team and he's nonverbal and he's 8 and he has Mobius syndrome, which is a syndrome. Yeah. And he's actually on a G-tube and I want to put him on real food blends. And I said to and he's nonverbal, his speech therapist was there and his nurse was there and he lives in like a long-term care facility. And I said and he has behavioral issues. And I said to his care team that was there, I wonder if he has stomach aches. And they said he's been headbanging. And I said, I bet you his stomach hurts. And they said, well, he has had loose stools and he has had, some stomach aches. And I said, well, why isn't anybody talking about his tube feed? The kid only eats one formula. Why can't we put him on real food blends? If he's banging his head and he's nonverbal, there's something going on. Maybe his behavior would be better if he didn't have a stomach ache. And they checked his ears and he didn't have an ear infection. So, you know what I mean? It's like, it's a process of elimination. Somebody caring enough to like changing this kid,
What happened? Did he get better? Did he improve after?
It just happened. It just happened on Monday. We have conference every Monday. So now I have to reach out to, we're trying to send him to like this clinic at NYU that does GI and a bunch of other things, but I'm going to reach out to Real Food Blends and the RD on his team at his long hair facility. Cause I don't want to be the one that's like flying in on a horse and changing everything. Like I like to talk to everybody involved because I'm seeing him like one time in the middle of a conference. I don't know his whole history. So I don't like to just change things. I like to
holistically treat function as a team.
Of course. So I want to speak to the other people and see what they think. But it takes, you need to think outside the box and you need to have as many people on the team as possible that can think like, if you're feeding somebody a formula all day, every day, and they're headbanging or they're having diarrhea, maybe it's not working out well. Like, let's think, same with kids at home. If a kid is not meeting their calorie needs and they're running around and all they're having is juice and crackers all day, they're not full and what is in their food? How can we optimize their nutrition? How can we, help them focus in school? I talk a lot about protein for breakfast, enough with like waffles and peanut butter, and bagels with cream cheese. It's not enough protein for kids to stay full till lunch.
Hey, I happen to think that New York City has the absolute bagel and lox, like best bagels and lox I've ever had. But, there is a fair amount of lox mixed in with that, just saying.
Yeah, but there's no 5-year-old that's like, give me lox.
Mine? I'm so sorry. Bear will not eat avocados. They're disgusting, Mommy. He will not eat guacamole. But if I pull out smoked salmon on a Sunday morning, he will eat smoked salmon and like, oh my God, my girlfriends rip on me. They're like, your 4-year-old will eat smoked salmon, but he won't touch an avocado. And I'm like, he's my kid, but he won't touch an avocado. I'm like, what is wrong with you? He's like,
that is fine. Yeah. But how many kids go to school and have, waffles with pancakes or syrup and butter and have no protein and have a ton of sugar and then are bouncing off the walls and then an hour later are starving.
Chicken and waffles is a staple in South Carolina. So yeah, but it's fried chicken.
Yeah, it's chicken.
Yes, but but oh my goodness, this is why we have such a high rate of the diabetes.
but also, if the waffle was smaller and they didn't put syrup on it and they just put a little butter, like my son will eat waffles, but I won't put syrup on it. I just put butter.
Yes. And you probably serve it with the protein.
Yeah. He eats it with eggs.
Yes. Okay. So these kids, they come to you, you go to them. When you were doing early intervention, you would go to them, which I can't even fathom the amount of difficulty of finding a sub and finding a parking spot and then traffic. But like,
no, I don't have a car. What are you talking about?
Wait, you don't?
This is Manhattan. We don't have cars.
Yeah, that just dawned on me. Oh my gosh. I did run into and get stuck behind tractors. So like that's our version of traffic.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. Yeah, I get stuck behind garbage trucks.
Yeah, no, and like an actual tractor. And then
That's
there was
amazing.
the time. Yeah, and then there is a down in Batesburg, Leesville, you do have to watch out when they're running their horses. So like
there's I'm so jealous.
Yeah, come.
I love horses.
You might catch diabetes or hypertension while you're here, but like okay, but
so
you go there and you give guidance on expanding the food options, making sure they're reaching all of the nutritional elements, their protein, those are the things that we're missing. Have you read Food Chaining by any chance?
No, but I think I have the book, to be honest.
Oh my gosh.
But I know what it is.
Yes, but y'all, this is why I love working with the RDs, because I feel like that's your person to help you food chain to make sure that the kid's diet is nourished so that they don't have the constipation, stomach issues, diarrhea, whatever.
And I also want all kids off Miralax. I'm like on an anti-Miralax campaign.
Okay. Yes, because I have a kiddo that was actually just recently hospitalized with constipation so bad that his bowels pushed his lungs up and he had an abscess into his, I think it was his right. Yeah. And it gets better.
What does he eat?
He's completely G-tube fed with a little bit of pureed foods. And
so why isn't he on Real Food Blends?
If only.
Why Real Food Blends is covered under insurance, all insurance.
There's variables.
Okay.
I work in the South, and because I have 2 X's, I don't have a functional IQ sometimes. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And I expressed concern that we should probably run some diagnostics, and was informed that the tiny human just needed to be vented more and give the daily Miralax dose. And I was like, we can't keep drugging our kids to make them poop. I wholeheartedly think that this little guy has, oh my gosh, not DeGeorge's anomaly. It just completely went on my head. Where the final portion of the intestine.
I know what you're talking about.
It's not innervated.
It's Hirschsprung's disease. Not von Wilderbrand. I know what it is.
It's Hirschsprung's disease.
Hirschsprung's disease. Yeah.
Yes, and Hirschsprung's does not have to be diagnosed immediately after birth. It could be diagnosed later on when they're a couple years old and they've struggled with. And I was told no, that they did not feel that it was necessary. I was like, this is like his 4th hospitalization in a year. Like, and he's on a quote unquote organic formula, but like it's clearly not cutting it. Like it's clearly not. If
organic means is that it doesn't mean that it's necessarily the best for the child.
Yes, but
I hear you. My head gets banged up against the wall a lot of times, also.
Yeah, so you should try Real Food Blends. I heard that it helps with that.
Well, also, you know why? Some kids I have on Real Food Blend 1 or 2 pouches a day. It's not the whole food. Mm-hmm. Sometimes 1 or 2 pouches just helps them go.
I have a lot of kiddos that when they switch away from the sugar ones and go to just and there's a couple of different plant food based ones out there that it does make that much of a difference, and all of a sudden they start having like solid.
The only reason why I love Real Food Blends is because it's 6 different flavors. So
yes.
Like, if I had to be on a formula for my whole life, I don't want one flavor every meal for the rest. That's like you eating vanilla yogurt 5 times a day forever.
Yeah,
like,
that's
no,
horrible.
thank you. I want to have salmon or chicken or beef or lentil or egg. You know what I mean? To me, if I were a parent, it would be Real Food Blends or that would be my only option, to be honest, as a parent.
Yeah.
Knowing what's in there. And I don't get any kickback from them. I just love their product. I mean, now, and I've seen the successes on it. I found them when they were literally like brand new, and her son's on his YouTube. She made it for her son. Her son is on the product. If she didn't believe in it, and if it didn't resonate with her family, she wouldn't. I mean, she made the product for her son. So, and I just have seen how amazing the kids react to it. I mean, no more vomiting, no more retching, no more Miralax. It's amazing. So
I want to reach out to somebody and get somebody to explain to me the complications of all the medicines. So if anybody out there listening, if you have a contact that can explain to us verbatim the side effects in all of the GI medications, like I know Miralax, the ingredient that makes Miralax white, I read an article in like actual news, not pseudoscience news, that it's the same ingredient that makes the white foam of your tennis shoes. Yeah. And I was like, that's fantastic in that it's not. So yeah. So somebody send me an email, michelle.dawson.slp@gmail.com or firstbite@speechtherapypd.com. Woo, woo. Okay. All right. I have to get us back to the last question because we have squirreled. And I
that's what happens, doesn't it? It always happens.
Yeah. But that's because we're both passionate and I love that.
I know.
Okay. I know. So oh, wait, I slid down my screen. All right. What are the top 3 most common pediatric feeding and swallowing disorders that you've treated over the last couple years in early intervention? And have you seen that shift?
So a lot of what I see are texture issues.
Okay.
For a lot of the kids, and a lot of it, I mean, in EI, I see a lot of kids on the spectrum. So it's a lot of food selectivity. So like only crunchy, only smooth. I only want food in this specific box, this specific yogurt. And a lot of it is just underweight and not meeting calorie needs. It's not really swallowing issues as much. I mean, a lot of kids have a lot of sensory issues. So it's a lot of low tone also. So we have to work within that, like without adding salt, like how we could add flavor with like lemon or other things and work on stuffing. A lot of kids stuff in pocket. And then, so a lot of what I do with the speech therapists and feeding is that we'll have like a joint session. Before I retired my sessions, is that we would have a joint session and we would come up with like a wish list with the parent of foods they want to add. And then the speech therapist would then go on her way of like of what texture the child is up to. And sometimes if they loved macaroni and cheese, we wanted to get macaroni and cheese in, first we would blend it. And then we would increase the texture, because if they liked it blended, they would like it in full pieces. So a lot of what I did as an infant with infants is when they were babies on purees and not gaining weight, is after they were like 8 or 9 months old, we would just blend table food. And so get away from the pouches and the low calorie stuff. And we would blend regular food. And once we knew they were not allergic to anything in that food. And then once we knew when they were older, if we blended ravioli with meatballs, well, like, hey, once the kid could tolerate more texture, we would just chop the ravioli and mush the meatball. And so then the texture would just sort of, we would just get the texture to where the kid was at, but the flavor was all the same.
Have you seen the ITSE diet come out yet?
What's that?
Oh, let me blow your mind. ITSE diet. It's the new International Dysphagia Diet Standardization Initiative. It was, so the National Dysphagia Diet, the NDD diet, like level 1 through 4, pureed, those kind of things. The ITSE diet has been created to replace that. Okay. So it was theoretically supposed to go live, big, bad, and ugly on, I think it was May 1st, 2019. but we're just starting to see it trickle down. And it has 7 stages of pureed foods and like, hell's bells, I think 4 stages of liquids, 4 or 5 stages of liquids. And there's triangles, but it's the acronym is IDDSI. Check that one out, because that is, and folks that are listening, Erin and I covered an episode on IDSI, either the end of July or the beginning of August. And, but what she's describing is perfect. Taking a child that has a sensory feeding aversion, or if you have a kid that, has an oral dysphagia with like the motor planning on how to manipulate the bolus. To be honest, I do not use chewy tubes or Z-vibes, because you don't need to wake up the face, and you don't need to teach a kid to chew on plastic in order to teach mastication. But if you slowly increase the viscosity of the food and shape the food out that way with actual food, just like you were describing with like the meatballs, like going from puree to like chopping and dicing, you're working your way up the IDSI triangle and up the appropriate developmental norms on what I lovingly refer to as a food age. So,
oh my God, yeah. So we were doing it. We didn't even know we were doing it.
Yes, that's everything you just described is best practice. That's why I was like, she has to have heard of IDSI. Okay, Google the IDSI. It's wonderful.
But I was just doing it because I made my son's baby food, A, because it was much less money, and B, because I made my own. It's a fortune. A pouch here is between $1.99 and $2.50 for one pouch.
Are you kidding? Well, that's because you're in the city. I mean, they probably got to ship it in from like Cancun. But
my point is for cost reasons, I made my son's own purees, and I also was able to change what I could make them in a million different ways. Yeah. What I tell parents to do now is everything you get from the supermarket, take the packages and throw them out.
Yes.
And just leave it in your freezer in the plastic container, or put it in like, a Tupperware. And then if you need to cut the how to make it, cut the baking or cooking instructions out of the package and put it in the Tupperware. I said, because everyone sees that it's this brand of this brand of that, and then they brand relate, and then they won't eat any other brands.
Yes. Okay. So then also the pouches, folks, we're teaching our children, they're a generation of suckers. Like they learn to suck and not learn how to do the hand to mouth oral prep stage of their swallow. And we're messing up all of our developmental norms. So just get rid of the squeezy pouches and spoons. Spoons are, yes. Okay. Yeah. All right. So your primary ones that you see are sensory. Do you see? So you got your sensory kiddos that typically are on the spectrum. What about cardiac kids? Do you see a lot of cardiac babies?
I have seen like hypoplastic left heart syndrome. I've seen a few of those, but they're always just very, very thin. And they really have they mostly have low tone also. I have seen a few kids with cardiac, not a ton. A few, not a huge amount.
What about children that have CP or strokes?
A few, not a lot.
Okay. So the bulk of your caseload in early intervention are children that are typically on the spectrum.
Yeah. And I do see a lot of preemies. So when preemies get out of the NICU and they are very small, I really work with the parents on waking and not having them do regular purees and having them bulk up purees, and trying to make the food as calorically dense as possible. But, you're also balancing that with, I don't want a super heavy kid who then won't be able to sit up and do anything gross motor wise. So, it's a fine balance, because then they're all orally defensive because they've had, an NG tube and like tubes down their throat since they're born. Yeah. So that's and they have a million therapies. So that's also a very delicate balance. But really in New York, I don't know if it's different state by state, but for me, it's mostly been sensory, and it's not only sensory autism, it's just sensory in general. Sensory, low tone, just underweight. Some are just parents that are clueless and, their kids can't gain weight. Or I had a little boy who's so cute. Mom was a personal trainer and the whole family was from Jamaica and they were vegan. and he was like 2 years old and 22 pounds.
Oh my
Now,
God.
my son was 27 at 1.
Yeah.
This kid was so cute, and mom was clueless. And I was like, you're a personal trainer. How do you not know your kid's not getting enough fat and protein? I changed. I mean, they're still vegan, but I was able to just educate her on high calorie, high protein, vegan foods. The kid gained 6 pounds in like 9 months. She sent me like a holiday card. I saw them in August, I think. She sent me a holiday card. He had gained like 6 pounds.
And he was like, bless. He was hungry.
Yeah. And I was like, stop with all like the pretzels and the potato chips, because people don't realize like Doritos or like Pringles are vegan. Just because it's vegan doesn't mean it's healthy. So, so I educated her.
Because some of the vegan foods are not delicious.
No, but the thing is also is making sure your kid is getting enough protein and fat. You know, listen, lentils are great with rice, but white rice is giving a kid no nutrition. Switch it for quinoa or switch it for, you know, a different, like a black wild rice, and make sure you're getting enough fat and protein and making sure that you're substituting and not just giving them like potato rice pancakes, you know, making sure that the flour you're using is like almond flour or quinoa flour, or, you know, making sure that I actually had to call the pediatrician, and I was like, something is going on with this kid. Like, he's not gaining weight. And then finally, you know, mom had changed the diet and like literally texted me from the supermarket, everything she bought. And he gained 6 pounds. So it's not like I'm there to change their diet. I'm just there to teach them how best to eat under the diet they want to keep.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. But people don't realize that. You know, educated people don't always know what's out there.
Well, and then there's also the stigma. I mean, like, let's be honest. When I think of a registered dietitian, my first thought is, oh my God, if I tell her what I eat, she's going to tell me that like I eat junk food. You know what I mean? Like, I like my nightly square of dark chocolate with like sometimes sea salt, sometimes raspberry.
I love that. I love dark chocolate with sea salt.
My boys are hooked on dark chocolate, and for Easter, if somebody gives them like regular chocolate and like the Easter egg, like the milk chocolate, they're like, "Mom, this is the bad kind." And my husband's like, "Got it. I will take one for the team." Because I mean, he's surrounded by dark chocolate year round, but like there is that concern that like, and each one of our professions, sit back and think about it. We all sin, we all pass judgment and have assumptions on what it is that our colleagues do. You know what I mean? Like, most times when people hear that I'm the speech pathologist, they assume I'm going to have a giant bag full of toys and flashcards. And I'm like, nope, I am not that kind of therapist.
But it depends. My son still uses his pacifier to sleep. He's a little over 2. He's not going to be 5 years old with a pacifier. Everyone does what they feel is good for their family. I don't pass judgment on people. This woman came in today who had the kid on the spectrum. She's like, he has his pacifier all day long. I'm like, okay, that I don't think is great, because for speech, I think it's not good. But my kid has it when he's exhausted and when he goes to bed. He doesn't have it in public, and I'll cross that bridge when I get rid of it. But if somebody comes into me and tells me they eat cake, I'm like, I eat cake sometimes. I mean, like, I just don't do it every day. It's like a fun food for me. I don't eat sweets every single day. I wish I could. But like, there's everything in moderation. Believe me, there are some dietitians that are crazy. You know, there are some people that eat like kale chips and broccoli and never eat anything. No, don't eat carbs. They're probably very sad people. No, I'm kidding.
I was going to say that I could hear my grandma going, oh, bless her heart, that baby just needs some mashed potatoes and gravy.
Exactly. But you know what I mean? I'm sure there's a few people in every profession that takes it to the extreme, and, you know, but people come see me and they're always like, oh, you're so normal. I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, obviously food, everybody loves food. We eat when we're hungry. We eat when we're sad. We eat when we're happy. You can't avoid eating. So when I feel so bad when like I see a 3-month-old that hates eating, because I'm like, that is just an innate form of joy, and like everyone should be able to eat.
Yes. So
that's why kids on a G tube, I'm like, I want to make it as like pleasurable for them as possible. Like I hate continuous feeds. Like let's try to bolus feed kids so that they're not connected to a backpack.
Yes. Okay. So folks, this is why you need to find an RD. All right. So, I mean, like really truthfully, okay. For those of us that live and work in rural areas like myself, the registered dietitian is probably not the person that works at the WIC office. Most of the individuals that work at the WIC office here where I live are nutritionists. And for my medically fragile children, often I need the skill set of the registered dietitian. So for me personally, I have to often have them work in collaboration with the specialty care clinic at our larger hospitals, or be seen at a specialty feeding clinic with our major state hospital. Or some of your larger cities will have registered dietitians and like outpatient clinics. But those are where else can I find an RD? I know those are the ones that
check because your WIC office might have RDs. They might just call them nutritionists, but they probably are hiring RDs because it's a federal program.
Yeah. So I mean,
it's probably an RD.
Yeah. So check. I just know that like in my local offices.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But just every RD is different. Not some of them are great. Some of them are, I don't know. Some of them an RD might be brand new where you are. So everybody has a different skill set,
Yes.
Like I am not amazing on TPN and I am not amazing on all formulas. Like I have some inpatient RDs in the hospital that are my go-to for certain questions on like concentrating formulas. Like my strong point is like outpatient RD and like working with families and pinpointing other issues, like working with the whole family. If it's inpatient calculations, like it's so funny that you started with the calculations, like that is not my strong point because like I don't really deal with that many tube feeds. I deal with some of them, but I'm not inpatient dietitian. Like I'm not in a hospital. So, and most of my clients in my private practice are seeing me for other reasons. And I see adults also. So I sort of have a really broad, my overall practice is very broad, but in early intervention, most kids are not on a G-tube where I live.
Yeah. And see, that's just it. We all go to school and we learn the same thing, right? Like all RDs go to school and you have to learn certain subject matters. All SLPs go to school and you have to learn the big 9. And then you get out and then you specialize in what calls your soul, right?
Yeah.
But totally. That's why all of the medical system is moving in the direction of interprofessional practice, because we have to be able to have these conversations. We have to be able to say, hey, Susie Q from down the street, what do you think about X, Y, and Z? And have a skilled and informed opinion given back to you. So, okay.
And that's why I love early intervention. Like I've already been doing it for so long and I still want to be in it, which is why I'm only doing evaluations. Like I don't even have time to do evaluations, but I still do them because I love it so much that I don't want to leave it.
Yes. It sucks you in. One of the, like, I always joke when I'm like lecturing, I'm like, early intervention's like this vortex. At first you're like, I don't want to do that. And then you're like, this is amazing. Okay.
And even the mom today was like, I don't know what I would have done if I didn't meet with you. Like, this was amazing. See, this is why I do what I do.
Yes. We're called to help heal. That's
exactly.
Pretty. Okay. I adore you and I want to hear more from you. So where do we go? If somebody wants to listen to you on like a regular basis or like learn more from you, how do they find you? Where do they go?
Well, my website is NYCeatwell.com. And then I have a page on Facebook. I think it's my name, Deborah Malkoff-Cohen, City Kids Nutrition. Okay. And so I don't have any, it's my first podcast.
I mean, it took us forever, but
I know. This is so much fun. They can always ask me questions there, shoot me an email. If anybody has any cases they want just like an opinion on, I can always help them.
Okay. And you have a dear friend that's got a radio show that you guest.
I do. So my nurse practitioner at NYU has her own radio show on Sirius. I think it's channel 110. It's the nurse practitioner show. So I go on frequently. She has her show every two Thursdays a month she's on, and she's amazing. And she has great topics. I just did a feeding. I just had actually 2 feeding therapists, me and an inpatient dietitian, do a whole show. And we just pick topics all the time about interesting things. So it's really great. People call in all the time about so many feeding, swallowing, texture issues. It's amazing how many kids are really suffering from just a myriad of different things when they're young.
Yeah, we're saving babies that we used not to save, and now we just gotta
100%, 100%.
And the rest of the world is trying to play catch up. So this is so cool. Oh my gosh, I am so grateful that you didn't go to the beach and that you are you and fun.
You're so cute. I wish you lived closer.
I know. I was just thinking, like, when am I going to the city again?
I wish you lived closer.
I don't know. Last time I was there, I totally got ripped off in one of those. What is it? The catamaran? They put you on the back of the bike and they pedal you around.
No one who does that. Tourists do that.
I'm the tourist. They took $200. I went for like a 20-minute ride, and he goes, "That's $200." I was like, "What the HE double hockey sticks?" Okay, all right. That's a very patient husband. That's a conversation for another day. Hold on one second. I got to switch us to questions. Everybody's like, "Oh, Michelle, she's so gullible." Today, I am asking for your help. It is with the unrelenting support of sponsors, donors, and volunteers like yourself that feedingmatters.org is able to make a positive impact in the lives of children with pediatric feeding disorders. By supporting Feeding Matters, you can become a driving force towards systemic change to create a better world for children with pediatric feeding disorders. So donate today at feedingmatters.org/donate. Also, thank you, because they're putting good out there and they need to be supportive in this initiative. So on behalf of First Bite, just want to say thanks. That's a wrap, folks. Once again, thank you for listening to First Bite, fed, fun, and functional. I'm your humble but yet sassy host, Michelle Dawson, the All Things Peds SLP. This podcast is part of a course offered for continuing education through speechtherapypd.com. Please check out the website if you'd like to learn more about CEU opportunities for this episode, as well as the ones that are archived. And as always, remember, feed your mind, feed your soul, be kind, and feed those babies.